Hey, everybody. This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good looking friends. America, you better start thinking about lawyering up because Archewell is pushing their way ahead with censorship. And not only have they been using Archewell public charity funds to defeat and undermine democracy, they are doing it now in Australia. According to this tweet by Omid Scabies, he writes that Harry and Meghan's Archewell Foundation has helped fund a report examining the roles that news media organizations play in the spread, escalation, and encouragement of online hate speech in Australia. Now, many of you may not know, but Australia is also going through the same process to pass legislation, just like the online safety bill in the UK, which, by the way, I'm going to show you a little bit later on in this video how Harry's Aspen report, being a part of that commission, has influenced that online safety bill here within the United States. Let's get started, folks. But before I forget, please help the kid out and like this video so the algorithm can pick it up to spread this message out, because this is an extremely important topic that people need to be aware of. Also, if you can, try and make it to the end of this video, because it does all make sense now after witnessing some of the behavior by this couple. So now let's take a look at what they funded. So when you click on this link into what Scobie had provided, it brings you to this website called purpose.com. And it says, Online Hate Speech in Australia, the Role of News Media and Pathways for Change, dated September 25th, 2023. It begins, online hate speech is particularly visible and toxic element of social division. It fosters the negative targeting of communities, diminishes people's well-being, erodes social cohesion, and is linked to violence as well as knee-jerk, counterproductive policy design. Within our complex and evolving information ecosystems, news media institutions have enormous power to influence public discussion and catalyze online activity. For this reason, they require special attention and accountability when it comes to online hate. In this two-part study, we explore the roles that news media institutions play in spread and escalation of online hate speech in Australia. Our research has produced practical examples and analysis to support policymakers, community advocates, news media practitioners, technologists, and other stakeholders working to reduce these harms. Part 1. The dynamics of hate speech online. Let's remember, these are reports that Archewell has supported and funded. It says here, explores the roles news media actors play in online hate speech to spotlight the challenges faced by stakeholders today. We have provided 4 rich case studies that illuminate different ways in which hate speech germinates around news publishing online. We found that the very explicit component of online hate is just one part of a bigger picture that includes negative framing of communities by the media and a system of incentives that shapes relationships between news media and their sources. We argue that approaches that consider online hate speech without these broader spheres of activity risk missing a crucial element of how online hate manifests. This may, in part, explain why current efforts that take a more narrow focus are failing to curb it. Part 2 to this report says, Curbing Dehumanizing Hate Speech Online, looks at how these patterns pose major challenges for existing approaches and outlines pathways for change. We begin by reviewing the patchwork of federal and state legislation and regulation that applies to online hate speech and news media publishing in Australia. We then explore the challenges and loopholes posed by this approach and examine possible solutions and barriers to address these issues. Finally, we look to other opportunities outside the regulatory framework that could reduce the prevalence and harm of online hate. These approaches include tools for greater moderation, monitoring and analysis of dehumanizing hate speech, to education initiatives for journalists, as well as coalitions for greater research and knowledge sharing. We conclude the report with the recommendations to address these challenges and continue building our understanding. So these 2 reports that have all these made up analysis and description on what is defined as hate speech, which, by the way, hate is subjective. You could say, I don't like Meghan Markle because she is a terrible dresser. Doesn't mean that that's hate speech. This is subjective to each and every person on what they think and feel. By the mere fact that they are doing this, it just shows how much they want to lock down everybody's thoughts and expressions. The good part about the United States having the First Amendment is that hate speech is protected under the First Amendment. So if, let's say, Ms. Markle wants to run for an office and I say that I don't think she is fit for office because she's psychologically mental, then that's my opinion and she can't do anything about it. But she is trying sure damn hard to make sure that countries all around the West are doing something about it to force pressure onto the United States. This is what I see happening. Eventually, the United States will move to pass some type of law to curb freedom of speech if this continues. And this is what we're seeing with these various bills that are now being passed through and actually violating not only First Amendment rights, but then starting to encroach on Fourth Amendment rights, which is your right to privacy. Honestly, this is some dangerous stuff. And the fact that Archewell is involved in this just shows that it's not an impact social foundation public charity, but more as a vehicle to push political agenda, which I keep saying over and over does not qualify for them to have this 501c3 status for the tax breaks. And quite frankly, this is getting to a point where if they continue to keep this up, then what is happening with Missouri Biden at this moment, with them having the government interfere with regulating America's freedom of speech during certain topics? You can bet that this will trickle over to both Harry and Meghan, because I see a civil lawsuit in the future from the American people if these two continue to keep it up. And the reason why I do these videos is to show the efforts to everyone on what they're doing with this foundation, because these are legitimate receipts. So when the time comes and let's say they start clamping down and canceling all of us for speaking out because they deem it's hate speech, you can bet this is going to come in handy to fire back on them. This, too, is also extremely important for Samantha Markle to have for her lawsuit should this case move forward. And this is why we need it to move forward, is to expose the judge showing that Meghan and Harry are blatantly trying to undermine our democracy and take away American civil rights. I do believe that not only Samantha is just to sue for defamation, but she also has just cause to sue Meghan and Harry for violation of civil rights of her First Amendment, considering that Harry is a part of the censorship industrial complex and was acting on behalf of the state. And as Samantha has said, that there is evidence that there was a coordinated campaign to attack her and her family, then I think all of this needs to come out to understand exactly how Harry had the access to get things shut down. And I raise this point again. Harry is on record saying that he knew about January 6th and sent a note to Jack Dorsey. How come nobody from our federal government has pulled this man in for questioning? I know many of you may come at me and say, oh, I don't like when you get political, but here's the issue. It's not about politics. This is about taking away your freedom. And look, they are overreaching now, going to Australia to affect your rights in your country and what you can say and what you can think. It's happening in the UK, and we're seeing this play out with GB News. At what point is this going to stop? Now, the United States, we know that Meghan and Harry are directly trying to undermine our Constitution by forcing policy and legislation using Archewell Public Charity as a front in order to mask this Marxist, Lenin, communistic approach to shutting down people's freedom of speech. And we all know that Meghan is determined to get people to stop criticizing her because she can't take hearing the truth. This report that Archewell Public Charity is funding attempts to define exactly what hate speech is. And it says hate speech most commonly refers to expressive acts that incite discrimination, hostility, or violence towards a person or group because of who they are, or on the basis of their protected characteristics. There is no standardized definition or list of protected characteristics applied across context and jurisdiction, hence the reason why they feel the need that they have to do that. In Australia, there are relevant definitions of vilification in federal and state legislation. However, these definitions vary, as do the lists of protected attributes. This patchwork of definitions has been identified as a significant problem in our Part 2 report. Additionally, the term hate speech is often used in the heat of arguments about what people are publishing, what motivates them, and how speech should be regulated. And so the definition of the term itself becomes contested. Mindful of the importance of clear definitions within research and policy, we have chosen to use social media company Meta's definition of hate speech. This highlights the varied and nuanced nature of hate speech as an attack, as has particular relevance to our research context. Meta defines hate speech as a direct attack against people rather than concepts or institutions on the basis of what we call protected characteristics: race, ethnicity, national origin, disability, religious affiliation, caste, sexual orientation, sex, gender, identity, and serious disease. We define attacks as violent or dehumanizing speech, harmful stereotypes, statements about inferiority, expressions of contempt, disgust or dismissal, cursing, and calls for exclusion or segregation, according to Facebook 2023. So now we're seeing that Facebook's strict opinion on what hate is now becoming a de facto standard of how hate speech should be classified, which all very subjective and opinionated. So if we say that Meghan Markle is a brainless, clueless idiot, that could be seen as hate speech because it's subjective. She could feel offended and not like it. And then all of a sudden now you're getting in trouble because you expressed your disgust and disdain for a person who lied, manipulated, and abused her power. You see where I'm going with this? You see how easily this can be manipulated? This is why this is so dangerous. In the second report, it goes into detail about online hate speech. And we should all be concerned because this is not about targeting the journalists and media outlets. We've seen how corrupt and biased, at least in the United States, our media is. We're essentially pushing propaganda out daily in the mainstream media. Now, this is just my opinion, but what I see happening here around the world is this fear from the globalists should in 2024 we have an election and a certain somebody gets elected into office. This is going to throw a wrench into the globalists' plans because right now what we're seeing with our current country, literally it's America last. Keep the borders open, give our tax money away to helping other countries like the UK rain issue, which in my opinion is a money laundering operation. This ongoing conflict is on purpose being prolonged because it is generating opportunity for so many of these oligarchs out there, as well as our corrupt politicians here in Washington and elsewhere in the Western world. I state this loud and clear because this is my opinion and it's my human right to express it. Those that don't like it and disagree with it, that's on you. And that's totally fine because that's your opinion and that's your right to express that. Words have no power unless we give it. And seriously, this is where we need to get back to enforcing our laws that we have existing now as a result of if, let's say, someone is provoked by something someone says and they go ahead and act out against it, then there should be consequences focused on that, not focused on the words that someone expressed. It's not my fault that you are getting angry at what I'm saying. That's totally on you. I don't control how you feel. So get your emotions in check. Anyhow, I don't mean to be going down this rant, but the fact that Meghan and Harry are so gung ho on curbing freedom of thought expression and making sure that you can't be heard is the epitome of censorship. And what they're doing, imposing themselves in funding this research or bullshit reports that these countries are coming up with to push legislation, should be worrying to everyone. Because not only are they doing this here in the United States, but clearly undermining other countries' democracies by forcing themselves in this manner to fund and support these BS reports in order to push policy and legislation. I truly don't understand why the media is so hell bent on not talking about this stuff. I understand that clicks is what gets them paid, but really, do people care about what Meghan Markle is wearing or how much plastic surgery she has? No, I truly believe that this is all a deflection to keep focus off of what they're really doing. And it's this shady shit that they are doing. Now, Omid Scobie announcing this today, I wonder what the hidden agenda is. Or did they stupidly think that this was going to gain popularity? I fully believe, and this is just my opinion, that this was done on purpose as a political move to show the United States why she should have that seat in the California Senate. We all know that that seat comes with a seat on the committee for the Intelligence Board, which is the same committee that is in process of evaluating and looking at this bill that wants to set up a committee to survey the entire U.S. population on digital communications, meaning surveillance of who you're talking to, invasion of your privacy. This is the same committee that is pushing this TikTok bill, aka invasion of your privacy and Fourth Amendment rights, as well as you can see here, Michael F. Bennett from Colorado, who has reintroduced a new bill to set up a new federal corrupt agency that will work with the FTC in monitoring U.S. citizens' digital communications that span across everything from text messaging to group chats to social media to even your internet searches. Sounds so familiar to what the online safety bill has inside of its 255 pages worth of controlling and monitoring UK citizens' free speech, expression, and thought. Now, in the beginning, I did say I was going to show you how the online safety bill was influencing US policy, as well as this Aspen report globally. So, first, let's take a look at the FTC recommendation. In this report, they reference many sources coming from the UK, but specifically one source that caught my attention, which was this one. Well, you're not misreading that. It does say the UK Department for Digital Culture, Media, and Sport. Now, who recently has been in the news for taking down Russell Brand was the head of this division, Caroline Dinenage, who, aka I call Dingleberry, and is the one who spearheaded this online safety bill. Not only is this referenced here, but other influences from the UK have been infiltrated throughout this government report in the United States, including Prince Harry's Commission on Misinformation, Disinformation. So the proof is there that this online safety bill will seep into other democracies in order to silence people. But let's get back to this Aspen report. Not only has this affected the United States, but also has reached New Zealand and pushing the wrong buttons. You can see here the taxpayer union here is pushing against the fact that these new regulations that are being slapped down onto the people has a chilling effect on free speech. And in it, they reference this Aspen Institute report. As you can see here, they're contesting the studies that were included in order to support these legislations. Aspen Institute report is one of them. But circling back to the US on its legislation and what's influencing it, this new federal agency that Michael Bennett wants to have set up pretty much replicates the new assumed roles that Ofcom in the UK is undertaking now in monitoring, censoring, and going after people in the UK for their thoughts on whatever it is that does not align with this agenda that's being pushed. You can see the parallels. And as I've been reading through this document, it's becoming more and more clear how this online safety bill is going to influence other regulations and policies that are happening in the Western world. And we're going to see this influence now be pushed onto Australia. All of this is being backed and enforced by people like Meghan and Harry, who are funding these bullshit reports and outlining this framework on what should be done. Now, if you made it this far in this video, I thank you, because I hope by now you understand and see how nothing that Megan does is by accident. And there is a purpose for releasing this information. Why would she put that out there? Well, I believe that this is to show the world that she is an advocate for supporting, fighting hate speech, and doing good for the community and protecting people from online harms. But we all know that that's not true. We all know that this is about getting this power. And what better way to get this power to control what people say about her, because she's so petty like that, is getting this seat. This is the only reason why this would be relevant to release that information through SCOBY. And that's just my opinion. But what do you guys think? Do you guys feel as fired up as I do, seeing the audacity of this couple going in and forcing their way and trying to censor people globally? It's outrageous that these two have the gall to think that they are the arbiters of truth and that they get to decide who gets to say what and what they get to say and what they get to spread. We all know that they are part of the propaganda that's being pushed with a lot of these globalists in making us think and feel a certain way in order for them to profit. This is all about profit and power. But I want to hear what you have to say. Definitely leave your thoughts below. As always, I will be back with more content. But until then, please be safe, and I will talk to you later. Bye.
Such a fraud.